Hi all! Everything in my video is pulled from the public domain, and I am using them under the Fair Use, Fair Dealings guidelines. Everything I say is my own opinion. You should look into this information for yourselves, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Morning, everybody. I don't even know where to start. I finished watching the third episode and I am beyond stunned and quite frankly disgusted, especially when you realize that this was done while the Queen was alive. And I think Harry and Meghan knew that she was going to see this and they still sanctioned it. Just a level of disrespect and the things that they said just makes me ill. So let's jump in and cover it for those of you who are waiting, because it's really shocking. And once again, I've caught them in multiple lies and omissions. You know, an omission is a lie also by omission. So let's just get there, shall we? Let's go. So section 3 starts off with the engagement interview where Meghan says the entire engagement interview was she called it an orchestrated reality show. She said that it was completely rehearsed, which I can totally believe. So of course, as they've done in all of the other sections, they constantly throw Diana at you because they want to make sure that you know that he's Diana's son. Diana. And they say a lot about her in the interview. Here's some snippets for you. As well as saying how wonderful Catherine, William, and the family had been to them. Listen to this.
You know, being our neighbours, we managed to get that in quite a few times now. And Catherine's been absolutely
wonderful,
amazing, as is William as well. Fantastic support.
He's talked to my dad a few times, hasn't been able to meet him just yet, but it's all been worth every effort.
What do you think your mother would have thought of Meghan or said about Meghan?
Oh, they'd be thick as thieves, without question. I think she would be over the moon, jumping up and down, so excited for me. But then, as I said, would have probably been best friends with Meghan. So no.
Now I take, I don't know how you would say it. I don't like the fact that he said that Diana and Meghan would have been best friends and thick as thieves, because I don't think so. Diana was a monarchist. She loved the monarchy. She would never have approved of what these two are doing. Anyway, it moves on and Meghan says, we're just now getting to tell our love story because the royal family didn't want us to at the beginning. They didn't want to. I'm like, what? Now, the BBC went on record. Miss Hussein said that, recollections may vary, that she was told to do the interview. She did the interview. And she was asked to do it the night before, and it was recorded the next day. She said, we did have discussions with them beforehand about what we would cover and what they were comfortable sharing. But no, it was not an orchestrated anything. Then, of course, they put up the gazillion pictures of the paparazzi again. But then they decide to go into a 20-minute long history lesson about slavery. So while they're giving us a slavery lesson and telling us how the UK had more slaves than the United States and how Jamaica was like out of sight, out of mind, and it was all of these slaves that were, making money for Britain, and it was, all of these things, I at this point, I'm not really listening to them. I'm just skipping forward because I don't like where this is going, and I don't like the fact that they're essentially blaming slavery on the UK. They're talking about it was the first slave ship was personally commissioned by Queen Elizabeth I, and that it continued on until all through kings and queens until it was finally abolished in 1820. Now, this is part of where I get upset. Because they're like, oh, the British, they enslaved everybody. It's slaves, worse than the United States, slaves. Where did those slaves come from? The people of Africa rounded up their own people, put them in cages on the beaches, and sold them. But they conveniently left that out of the history lesson. And I think that's an important part of the history lesson, don't you? Then they continue to say that in the mid-20th century, Britain went to the Caribbean islands and brought back people, recruited people to come to the UK. And these people became bus drivers, nurses, teachers. And what are these people saying in this? That they were low-paying jobs. So essentially insinuating that they're still, in some fashion, slaves. It's disgusting. Let's be honest, they were put in a lot of positions on tour like this, and nobody said a word and nobody complained. And I am happy to report that some of the people of the Commonwealth are not happy with this series because they say it's patronizing of their citizens, which it is. Then they skip forward to December 5th, 2017, and it was their first walkabout. So the first thing Meghan says is, I didn't know what a walkabout was. Right. And then Harry goes, well, I couldn't help her because it's all about clothes and fashion. Now, keep in mind what she did for a living. We've all seen the pictures of her and the fashion and the clothing and the interviews about structure and tailoring. But she wants you to believe that she didn't know anything about the fashion. She didn't know what to do. And Harry couldn't help her. So there's a lie right there. So she goes on this first walkabout with Harry. She has nothing but good press, and everybody talks about how she's sparkling. So all of a sudden now, it goes forward to November of 2021, and there's Mandana and Diane with them. Remember you guys when they went to the Twin Towers and they acted like they were on a royal tour, even though they weren't? So Mandana looks at Meghan and goes, I want to talk about these royal correspondents. Well, what makes a royal correspondent? And Harry launches into this 10-minute thing about it and basically says that the royal correspondents are an extended arm of the palace. So anybody who's calling themselves a royal expert somehow in some way works for the palace. By the way, Meghan asks Harry to turn on some music and he clicks a button and Elton John. Yeah, we knew he was going to get a plug. Now at this point, Harry brings up Diana again and he starts talking about the royal rota and says that they're all tabloids except for one and they're given time slots and that the deal is since the public pays for the royal family has to give them, time to be in the media. What they don't tell you is how much the average person pays for the royal family. And just so we know, it's £1.29, I guess is what it was called. Like $1.29 in pounds. Like nothing. So then James Holt says, if you don't do for them, for the newspapers what they want, then they're going to write something bad about you, is essentially what he said. And they continued to complain about the paparazzi again. Then they go back into the UK media. They're trailing everybody. Doria comes online and says, I never felt safe. I felt unsafe. Now we start to get into the meat of it because what happens now is Meghan goes, they wanted my mom's side of the family to be the one stirring up the drama, but it was the other side of the family. And she starts talking about Samantha and she didn't know Samantha and blah, 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 blah. By the way, for those of you who are unaware, the motion to dismiss for Samantha's lawsuit was denied and it's going to court. Then the story goes into Meghan's niece, which is Sam's daughter, because they reconnected in 2007. Now, Meghan said that her dad said to her, Samantha found her daughter. Her daughter was never lost. Her daughter had been raised by the paternal grandparents. And essentially, Meghan and this young lady connected. They went on vacations together. They became very close. And their relationship was just fine. So then Meghan's like, I went to Sandringham, everything was fine. Then they skip to Princess Michael of Kent and the Blackamoor brooch that she wore. Now, this is when Harry comes out and says, some people are the problem and not the solution. Now, I find that interesting because right after that, he brought up the Nazi uniform that he wore. Remember that? Now, we knew Harry was going to address the Nazi uniform. He said it was the biggest mistake of my life, and I spoke to a Holocaust survivor. That same Holocaust survivor, by the way, said that he really didn't care. But yet his friends are on here going, oh, but he's learned and he's changed and evolved and he's not a racist. So he can change and evolve, but apparently Princess Kent can't, because that's essentially what he's saying. So if he had learned and evolved as a 20-year-old, why was it that after that he made racist comments about one of his fellow soldiers? Why was it after that, when he was dating Chelsea Davy, did he make those racist comments to the comedian? He had not evolved at all. He'd simply been given a pass. Then it shows them in New York going, remember they went to the Twin Towers and then they went to the military base and then they went here and they went there, and they show this. This is all being filmed for Netflix. And by the way, they flew there and back on a private jet. And then he brings up his military and leaves off the fact that they used to call him Bunker Harry, and they try to make you feel sorry for him because he's no longer in the military. He just loved it. It was a pity me thing. The next thing they discussed was the Heads Together, where they all got together on stage and talked about it and how wonderful it was going to be. And then that segued into Meghan claiming that there was no classes on how to be a duchess, no training. And then, of course, we found out that was a lie. First of all, she had a 2-hour lesson in etiquette at a local tea house. I told you guys all about that in a previous video I did. Then she was assigned to Samantha the Panther Cohen, and she got 6 months training on how to be a duchess. So when she says that she wasn't trained, that's a lie. Then it gets into this whole red dress that she wore to the Intrepid for the Freedom, night, where they had the woman sing God Save the Queen on an American ship, giving awards to American servicemen. By the way, her name was not on the, the program. But they show her custom making this dress for her, which I found shocking because the dress was too tight. She had back fat rolls. It made her look big. And that honey bun bust to this day bugs the crap out of me. So when this is over, she says, when I was in the UK, I never wore color, ever. So that segues into Meghan says, I avoided wearing bright colors when I was in the UK, whenever I was in the UK and I was out and about, because after all, you didn't want to clash with anybody. Now, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. This is very easily debunked and shows that she's lying, but yet the words just spill out of her mouth. Like nobody is able to go on the internet and look up all the different outfits that she wore that clearly were not beige, black, or white. Like, really? She did wear other colors. Okay, then the whole thing segues back to the niece. And this is where it gets really sad, because the niece said their emails became a little bit less and a little bit less. And then Meghan says that the niece was not invited to the wedding because the comms team said it would be too weird to have her there when her mother was not being invited. And that's why she didn't get an invitation. Keep in mind that while this is going on, Harry and Meghan make no discussion about why the black side of Meghan's family was not invited. She just leaves that completely out. I actually felt bad for this girl because she said, to know that because of who my mother is, my relationship with Meghan was impacted in that way. She's that brainwashed that she can't see that had nothing to do with it. Meghan didn't want her there. So Serena Williams then makes an appearance, the only A-lister, I might add, to make an appearance so far. And all she really says is, they're so in love. Then it moves on to March of 2018 and the speech that the Queen gave about the Commonwealth. And this is where I get upset, because what you're about to hear is a direct attack on the Queen's life's work and the Commonwealth. So they said they went from colonialism to independence in the Commonwealth countries. And those countries were granted independence in a calculated move for the UK to protect their commercial and capital interests. So they created a privileged club of formerly colonized nations known as the Commonwealth. So they're calling it Empire 2.0, and they're claiming that all of these Commonwealth countries that are very poor, it's only because the UK extracted all of their wealth. That's why they're so poor. I mean, they're literally attacking the Queen's life's work. It's very obvious they want to disband the Commonwealth and disband the monarchy. That's their goal here. Then they bring up Stephen Lawrence. Now, Stephen Lawrence was a gentleman that was sitting at a bus stop with a friend in 1993, a young African boy that was sitting there when a group of like 5 white thugs attacked and stabbed him to death. It's terrible. And 2 of his attackers were brought to justice. But I have an issue with the fact that there's just as much black on white crime, but they don't seem to, again, they just seem to omit it. I don't see any stats here about the crime in the UK. That concerns me. Don't misunderstand me. What happened to that boy was horrible, but you need to show the full picture. So then it switches and it's Harry talking about, we're coming up on the wedding and people are being offered money for information, lots of money. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, obviously, since you've never had to work and you've never gone hungry and you've never had to worry about paying your heating bill, I think it would be hard for you to understand why some people would take the money. He's like, well, thank God most people said no. I get that, but I could also understand why some people said yes. Now, at this point, she starts talking about her dad, and she was told about the pictures, and she says, I called my dad, and he denied that he took pictures for money, and she said, we'll come get you early, and her father said, no, don't do that, I've got things to do. And she said, as soon as she hung up, she looked at H and said, I don't believe him, I think he's lying. I'm wondering if he wasn't having a heart issue at that point and he just didn't want to tell her. I could be wrong, but wouldn't you want to not tell your daughter that you're possibly having a heart attack the day before her wedding? So, of course, here comes Doria. That's not what you do as a parent. That's a terrible thing. Now, let me just say, I'm not defending what Thomas Markle did. I will say that he has apologized multiple times for what happened, and Meghan refuses to forgive him. Now, according to what she put in this show, he had had the heart attack 6 days previous, which would be right about the time he was not answering her phone calls. And she's like, I'm calling. He won't pick up the phone. Now, she shows a text she sent him where she says, you haven't returned any of my calls since Saturday morning. And he wrote back, I've done nothing to hurt you, Meghan, or anyone else, and I know nothing about 20 phone calls. I'm sorry my heart attack is an inconvenience to you. To which Meghan goes, that's not my dad. His phone is compromised. He's never called me Meghan. And he goes, I have too called her Meghan. I call her Meghan whenever things are really serious. That was me texting. Now, you guys should know that since they were taping this, that man has had 2 heart attacks, a stroke. She refuses to see him. But the thing that just really got me was when Harry sat down and said, it's so sad what happened. She had a father before this and now she doesn't. And that's on me, because if she wasn't with me, she would still have a father. She has a father. The man is alive. He's 3 hours away, but she cannot see past her nose. And I've told you guys before, and I'll say it again, if that man dies without meeting those kids, just like I said, if the Queen died without meeting them, that's unforgivable. By the way, Harry sent some abusive text messages to Thomas Markle while he was in the hospital. We found that out in court. So abusive were they. They refused to read them out in court. But I noticed they don't mention those in this series or discuss them either. This is what I'm talking about. They leave out all the stuff that can make them look bad, and they want to make you sorry for Meghan. I'm not sorry for her. So now you guys know the crux of it. They're claiming severe racism, again with the paparazzi, and they're slamming the Commonwealth. And I truly believe they want to get a conversation started to kill the Commonwealth and to bring the monarchy down. I firmly believe that. I do. Also, an article came out that said that Harry has no regrets about this documentary, and yet he's still hoping for a reconciliation. And all I can say at this point is, if the royal family doesn't take action, I have heard they don't want to take any action until the book comes out. But if that book comes out and I'm not going to buy it, but is as bad as people say it is, and they don't take any action, then they deserve everything they're getting. That's all I can say at this point. Now, before I close this down, I want to show you some of the other headlines that are coming out now. People are saying that comparing Meghan to Diana is disgusting and outrageous, which I told you guys that. And the show appears to be backfiring. And I've told you that too. And one of the reasons it's backfiring is because they're constantly crying and whining, and she has attacked Catherine again. Also, people are going through it with a fine-tooth comb like me and finding lots of things that are simply untrue and lies. It's being panned. It's not doing well. People are just assuming that Netflix is going to walk away. We'll see. Diana's former butler is very upset at some of the things that Meghan Markle has said and done. It's coming out now that the filming was shameful and cowardly because it was done while the Queen was ill and dying, and they knew it and did it anyway. This next article points out, now we don't know what's going to the next 3, but so far, none of the A-listers you would expect are in there, really. Also pointed out, they kept going on about Archie's privacy, but they basically sold Archie's privacy to Netflix. And here's the article I told you about where Harry said he was delighted and had no regrets, but yet was still hoping for a reconciliation. And here's the statement he put out about, supporting his dad as king. Personally, I think it's a little too late. I completely agree. It's a little too too late. And like I said, if the royal family doesn't take some sort of action, if Harry and Meghan show up at that coronation, King Charles gets what he deserves at this point. William gets what he deserves. I've already told you all what should happen. They should be stripped of their titles. The children should be denied titles. And they should be removed as counselors of state. I know they don't have to be, but he should be removed. They should cancel the lease on Frogmore. And why keep it? Unnecessary. Let somebody else in the family have it. And finally, I think that Harry and the children should be removed from the line of succession. They should still remain beloved members of the family. They can come visit whenever they want. Family's welcome to see them. But if you want out, you're out. Cut the ties already, guys, because if you don't do something, it's over. Oh, one more thing. That bill that was put in front of Parliament, there have been articles out that King Charles doesn't want to take any action and doesn't want to remove those titles. But the bill, when you read it, you don't need the king to remove them. Parliament can do it without King Charles's, say so. So maybe that's what he's waiting for. Who knows? Anyway, don't forget to leave those comments. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You want to. Hit it. If you look in the description box, you'll see the links to my Twitter, Getter, Rumble, email, my Patreon account. Remember, when you see any spam on my channel, only by email can you reach me. To those of you who've donated through my coffee fund or through the thanks button, thank you so much. And as always, you guys, have a great day.